What's up, guys? It's Bolt, and I'm back with another Remnant 2 build guide. And in this video, we're going to go over my Anguish Demolition tank build. And this Anguish build is going to be a little different than what you guys are used to seeing. A lot of people tend to spec just into pure damage when it comes to Anguish. But the inspiration for this build was an thick skin and elemental resist build. Basically, every time I run through the gauntlet, I keep getting bosses that really shut down my builds by either like shutting my crit build down with thick skin or shutting down my mod or elemental build with elemental resist. So I had enough of it, so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna make a build that if I roll bosses that have those modifiers on them, that I don't even have to care. And this is the build right here. It's a hybrid DPS tank build centered around the Anguish handgun, which is one of the strongest weapons in the game. It's just stupid easy to use. It does a crazy amount of damage, and it does even more damage the less health the enemy does. So it scales. It gets to like 100% extra damage when the enemy's like almost dead. It's absolutely absurd. But so since this weapon does explosive damage, we don't have to worry about elemental. So that's number one. Number two, we completely removed crits from this build. We cannot crit at all on this build. We're just doing flat damage, and that is to get around the thick skin modifier, as thick skin tends to it lowers your crit chance and crit damage, so it kind of negates crit builds in a sense. So no elemental resist we have to worry about, and no thick skin. It's great. And on top of that, we're pretty damn tanky. But let's get right into it. First things first, we have the ARCHON slotted in first with the Chaos Gate. This is going to give us more mod gen, but most importantly, this is going to give us more damage. Really, really good to have. And even though it does take away some damage reduction from us, while we're in the Chaos Gate, we're about 60 and some change damage reduction. When we're not in Chaos Gate, as you see in the screen right here, we're at 70%, so we're pretty damn tanky. Next up, we have Summoner, and this is only to boost up the explosive damage from the Anguish. I hate Summoner. The summons get in my way. They don't do enough damage. So I typically only have the summons out while I'm dungeon clearing or mob clearing, and that's just to get a little aggro from the enemies. Other than that, when I'm fighting a boss, I do not summon them because they just tend to get in my way. And very important not to have things in your way when you're shooting the Anguish, because it does do friendly fire damage, and you will stun lock yourself with the mod. So just be careful about that. Whispering Marble, no stranger here to tank builds. This is going to give us some damage reduction and damage coupled with the Dried Clay Ring, which also gives us another some damage and damage reduction. Here's a newcomer here, and this is going to help us avoid thick skin. This is Burden of the Excavator. So this is going to boost our explosive damage by 35%, but our explosives cannot crit. So we get a nice flat damage bonus, but obviously it removes the crit, and we're not utilizing crit on this build, so it's no biggie whatsoever. Another newcomer is the Feeding Tube. Now this is going to be this is a very unique ring in a sense. You have to really be careful with what you place in your quick slot. So what we want in our first quick slot is going to be the Confidence Booster. Confidence Booster is going to give us a 10% firing rate buff. Anguish, the mod, does scale off of firing rate. Firing rate is a multiplicative bonus, so the higher the firing rate, the more we're going to be able to shoot our needles out from Anguish, the faster our explosions are going to be coming out. So this is a huge DPS increase, and this is going to alleviate us from having to keep spamming confidence boosters, which has like if you're not using potency, it's one of the quickest duration consumables out there. So, but with this, it's constantly going to be cast, so we're basically going to have that 10% firing rate increase at all times. And also, we're going to be using the Ring of Infinite Damage. This is an 8% increase to our firing rate. And on top of that, we will be using the Haste consumable. That is going to give us 10% firing rate on top of these other firing rate bonuses we have, because we are utilizing the Perception trait, which is going to increase our haste by 3% more, so that'll be a full 10% firing rate bonus. And recommended, guys, since we will be using these consumables, potency on this one. But I'll get back into the traits in a second. Star of the show is Anguish, and again, since we are stacking firing rate, the best mutator to use on Anguish is Bullet Weaver. That is going to increase our firing rate and our mod gen for it. And this mod is up indefinitely. There is no need to use Leaking Gemstone on this build. The way we have it set up, you could just have the mod out at all times. So it's pretty brain dead easy to use. You don't have to worry about ammo. And you're going to just be exploding everything nonstop in sight. Melee, we're using the Hero Sword, and that's just to use the Tainted Blade Mutator on there just to provide a corroded effect. And since we're going to be in Load the Weak Anguish mod at all times, we just need some passive damage and a debuff, so we went with Monolith and Spellweaver as the Mutator on there. That's just nice passive damage. For the armor, you want to be tanky on this build. I wore a tanky set that I love. I love this look. It's one of my favorite looks in the game. Feel free to wear something more optimal or heavier than this if you do so wish to do. But this is the Wielding Goggles, the Fader Chases, the Fader Locomotor, and the Fader Crushers. Now, since we do have max regrowth on this build, I decided to go with Tranquil Heart, so it could pretty much stack with the regrowth for some passive healing. Another good one would be maybe the Profane Heart, but we do not have enough space on our traits to utilize Siphoner and Leech, so I went with Tranquil Heart. Now, I wish I could put points into Triage to make this even better. If you do not like any of the traits that you see here and you want to spec into Triage, that is the trait that I do recommend that you do spec into. But with Regrowth and this, it does have decent healing. And if you're playing Boss Rush, you can always get the Regen buff or the health healing effect in this buff as well if you want to grab those. Alright, so back to the traits. Flashcaster, Regrowth are the respective archetype traits. Kinship, because you will be hitting yourself with the Anguish, and you do not want to kill yourself, so very important. It also helps, so if you do have your summons out, that you don't kill them right away. Fortify, this is a tank build, need that. Potency, very important, because we will be utilizing these consumables on this build, especially with the feeding tube for the confidence booster. Confidence with potency, confidence booster will be out indefinitely. Vigor maxed out, obviously. Spirit, this is going to be very important with the Insight trait, so we can have the Anguish mod up at all times. Chakra, so we can have the mod duration out on Anguish, Load the Weak out as long as we can. Perception, to boost our DPS with the haste that we will be using from the consumable. And Bark Skin, 9 points to get a little bit more tankiness. Let's go over the Prism for this build. Firing rate, very important, guys. Again, we're stacking firing rate for Load the Weak. Explosive damage, because it does do explosive damage, and mod damage, so it double dips on the damage right there. Prism itself, I have a health bonus here because we are a tank build, but if you do not want the health one, another good one would be the healing effectiveness or the life regen one. Longevity for mod and skill duration. Gunfighter, this is for the firing rate more so. We don't really need the reload speed, but hey, it's a fusion, so might as well throw the reload speed on there. But you really want the firing rate, very important. Sapper, this is a great one for this build because we get explosive damage and damage reduction, so it goes hand in hand with the goal of this build. Mage, mod damage, mod gen, standard stuff. And then Jack of all trades. I tested this with Hyperactive. Jack of all trades won. So, yeah. I was sad that Hyperactive, even with the extra firing rate, that it didn't beat out Jack of all trades. So, but if you cannot roll Jack of all trades, Hyperactive is very good. Immovable is a great one, so you don't get staggered while shooting your Anguish. That is a very good one to have as well. Brutality, if you're a masochist and you want to get your ass one shot, that's a fun one to have, but that kind of negates the purpose of the tankiness of the build. And again, Power Fantasy and Wrecking Ball are not going to be good on this build because this is a flat damage build to just go against Thick Skin and Elemental Resist. If you guys hate those modifiers like I do, then this is a cool build and a different way to run Anguish. Very easy to go through gauntlets with this build. You're so tanky, you do crazy damage. On the dummies, keep in mind, guys, I don't believe dummies could get exposed. Correct me if I'm wrong. And also the Anguish extra power boost that you get from the health scaling isn't attributed to the dummies, so you don't get the full DPS. But just on dummies itself, I was getting about 4.7k DPS without even having to try. Like, it's just brain dead easy to use, and I'm tanky. So when we get the buff against bosses when their health is depleted, this thing probably is going to shoot up another 1500, almost 2000k DPS. So very respectable damage on top of how tanky and survivable you really are. It's a very well-rounded build, good for all situations, good for beginners as well. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this build. If you did, please consider giving it a like. Please consider sharing it, subscribing if you have not done so already, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.